What's going on, guys? My name is Steve. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Today we're going to be reacting to Operation London Bridge, policing the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. I came across this video when I was searching for content about policing in the UK. That's definitely a topic I've been interested in for quite a while now, but I really haven't explored that topic all that much. Definitely something I want to learn more about going forward. But anyways, guys, I read the description of this video and I thought it would be really interesting to kind of learn what the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II was like from the perspective of the Metropolitan Police Service. I can only imagine a funeral of this magnitude must be extremely hard to plan for and to basically make happen smoothly without any major problems taking place. A little bit of what the description said was basically go behind the scenes with the London's Metropolitan Police Service as they delivered one of the most complex policing operations in history. I can only imagine that this had to be the most complex policing operation in British history. I can't imagine there has ever been, I might be wrong on this, but I really can't think off the top of my head of any state funeral for any country that I know of where it would have took so much work and so much planning to make something like this happen. I mean, Queen Elizabeth's funeral was absolutely huge. It's obviously just one of the most major events in British history, obviously. Specifically modern history. But this says that, basically this video is going to follow police officers involved in the planning, operation, and delivery of the ceremonial events and hear what it meant to the officers to be involved in a landmark moment in the UK's history. So basically what I think we're going to see here, guys, we're going to follow the police officers as they were planning this and as they were actually policing the actual ceremony itself. And just, I think this is going to give us a different perspective on what took place, behind the scenes of Queen Elizabeth's funeral. So anyways, guys, don't know what to expect here, but I think this will be very interesting. So let's just go ahead and dive in and check out Operation London Bridge, policing the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II.
The Princess, at her own request, joined the
This was a day of
ATM.
national rejoicing. A day indeed which had caught the imagination of men and women all over the world.
I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young.
The coronation of Her Royal Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
The Lion of Judah, Emperor Haile Selassie.
Winston Churchill.
Century has passed since a reigning monarch last visited India.
Nelson Mandela.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family.
Outside Buckingham Palace chanting "We want the Queen."
Thank you for everything.
The BBC is interrupting its normal programmes to bring you an important announcement. This is BBC News from London. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
When I actually got the phone call to say that she had passed, I was actually over at Lambeth, and I remember standing still. Again, such a moment of mixed responsibility with the event that we were going to have to run. But more importantly, I think I felt the national feeling of sorrow that somebody that had been part of so many people's lives. And as a police officer, you swear an oath to the Queen. And I think I really felt it at that moment doubly. Much as I'd never met her, I still felt, a real poignant moment when we heard the news.
You know, I think that, sorry to pause, Guy, but that just made me think of something. I've got that impression from a lot of you guys in the comments that so many people that never actually met Queen Elizabeth, they still looked at her as sort of like a mother figure or a grandmother figure. It's really interesting. And I think it's because, she was there for over 70 years on the throne. And it's just, she really was looked at as kind of a mother figure to the country. And, I had totally forgot that, I started this channel early September, and it was like a day or two after I started the channel, Queen Elizabeth died. When I had started this channel, I had planned on, learning about Queen Elizabeth II. I had no clue that she was literally going to die, like literally a day or two after I started this channel. It was just so interesting that, I had happened to just start the channel, briefly before that happened. But anyways, guys, let's continue.
A big hush came over the office, and the headlines came up to say that she died. And if I'm honest, it was a huge shock. I never thought it would actually happen. I've been planning this for such a long time now, and I think I thought that the plans would go on forever and she would go on forever, and I never actually thought that we would be standing here.
I think a lot of people did.
Delivering this.
I can only imagine.
But there we were. And I think at that point you set aside your sort of personal feelings about, how I felt about the fact that she died, and you stand up and you do your job. And that's what we did for the next 13 days.
I started my police service in Grampian Police, which is obviously now Police Scotland, but Grampian Police at the time I was serving there in 1998-96 had responsibility for Balmoral and Royal Deeside. It was a bit ironic for me in that sense, watching footage of the cortege coming down through an area of Scotland I love, that I live in, that my family are in, and then that playing out and coming back into London. So it was incredibly emotional. It was definitely challenging. There was definitely moments it was incredibly tiring, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Where I was, I'll never forget where I was or what day or what time when DAC Jane Connors rang me and said, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody else right now.
So my name's Lisa Hudson. I work for the Public Order Planning Department for the Met. My role during Operation London Bridge has been to lead the planning team, and I've been involved in that for about the last 4 years.
Man, I can only imagine the job she had.
So the scale of the operation is probably the biggest policing operation we've ever delivered.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's the largest number of barriers we've ever used. We used every single one that was available across the whole of the UK.
Wow, across the whole of the UK. That's crazy.
We had officers coming in from across the whole of London to police this, but in addition to that, we used officers from across the whole of the UK and the overseas territories as well. We needed their support to deliver this. As I said, biggest operation we've ever delivered in London, and it really couldn't have happened without their support. And I think it was a really good opportunity to bring the UK together from a policing point of view, using officers from all over the UK to show that this was one big plan that was delivered by us all.
So being the Gold Commander, it sounds like a very grand title, and actually what it means is that I'm ultimately responsible for everything that happens under the Operation London Bridge. So I'm in overall charge, and I work very closely with Karen Finlay, who is the Silver, to make sure that the plan is actually delivered as it should be delivered.
Oh, okay. So the gold is basically I don't know, the president of this operation, so to speak, and then the silver is basically the vice president. But I can't even imagine the stress this must be to make sure something like this takes off, smoothly. I mean, this is literally one of the biggest events in modern British history, and you are literally in charge of making sure everything, goes well. I literally wouldn't want that job. I mean, that's got to be a very stressful job, at least in that moment. But what an important job, because it did go well. So they obviously did a good job.
So I became involved as a Silver Commander back in September 2021, having been asked by DAC Jane Connors, who was Gold for Operation London Bridges, to become the operational commander for the event. And during that period between September and very, very recently, obviously we had to really progress the planning.
My name's Helen Millichap and I'm a Commander in Specialist Operations in the Met. I have responsibility for royalty specialist, parliamentary and diplomatic protection. It's a role I've been doing for around 18 months now, and being part of Operation London Bridge is actually one of the proudest moments of my career. The reason you need to plan so far in advance and for so many years for this kind of event is that its magnitude is enormous in terms of all the things that need to come together.
Can't even imagine.
At a given moment in time, and that's not just all the different ways that policing supports. It needs to be in collaboration, obviously, with so many other partner organisations.
London Bridge is the most complex operation, certainly that I've ever done, and I was involved in the Olympic planning as well.
Wow.
The death of a monarch is always going to be a massively significant event in history. And also that the monarch sets out very clearly what they want for their funeral. So you have to make sure that you meet that through the royal household.
That's true.
And whilst the Met is a big force, it's not big enough to be able to manage that over 11 days.
That puts it into perspective. She was also involved in the Olympic ceremonies, and this was much more, this was a much bigger event than that, obviously. And so I can only imagine, man, it's the amount of work that these people had to go through in order to make sure this was smooth and whatnot is incredible. But I hadn't even thought about the fact that, the monarch, in this case, Queen Elizabeth, actually probably helped plan a lot of her funeral out beforehand. I'm actually curious about that now. How involved was she with what she wanted to see from her funeral? If anyone knows, how involved Queen Elizabeth was with her funeral planning, please let me know in the comments.
And it's not just the officers who stand on the footprint and talk to people. A significant number of specialists like our search officers, lots of protection officers, because so many dignitaries and members of royal family, I'm sure people saw across the whole of the world, people, paying their respects. And obviously all of those leaders flew into London, so a really big protection operation, which involved firearms and search. And then you've got the lying in state where people were able to queue. And again, people were coming to queue for 14 hours.
14
so all of that takes a number of
hours?
police officers to be able to keep people safe and make sure that we can maintain the security.
I knew it would be a long line, but
the scale of the
14
operation
hours.
meant that we really needed support from all of our national colleagues to be able to run this event.
That's wild, man.
I think the biggest challenges were knowing that it was going to be unprecedented in terms of the amount of people and the sentiment of the British public and love for the Queen.
Wow.
And we knew how much the Queen was loved. We knew how many members of the public would come down into London and want to pay their respects in different areas. Obviously, we've got Buckingham Palace. You know, we've got the Houses of Parliament, we've got the different ceremonial aspects. So that was one part of it, was knowing just how much the public would want to come out and pay their respects to the Queen. And then obviously we had the movement because she died in Scotland, where we had to bring her down through from Northolt and actually into London and Buckingham Palace. And there's the most iconic moment where the SCG, where the hearse goes through the gates of Buckingham Palace and the SCG bow their heads. You know, a really iconic moment. So that shows the point at which the ceremonial aspects began in London.
Okay.
I think the thing that's worthy of note when you talk about Operation London Bridges is the fact that you can have a plan and you can try as best as you can to plan, but the reality with this operation was it was always going to be no notice.
That's
and
true.
With that, the unique complexity, the scale, the whole bringing together a UK policing. And a lot of that genuinely comes down to a can-do approach on the part of everybody that was involved in this operation. The minute there was an activation of Operation London Bridges, we knew what our distinct roles were, what our responsibilities were, and what was necessary to deliver that.
So how long was the main aspects of the funeral planned before her death? I mean, obviously they had to have had this stuff planned out for quite a while because, you know, obviously Queen Elizabeth was getting on up in age. I'm sure they had this planned out for, you know, many years at that point. What was she, 96, 97? I don't remember how old she was exactly. I think it was 96, but could be off on that. You know, I'm really curious about how much planning Queen Elizabeth was involved in and how long ahead of time they actually planned out the majority of this.
So all of the ways that the cortege was protected and facilitated through traffic, through streets, through different countries,
That's true, different countries.
The cortege needed to be. That was pinpointed to the split second to make sure that everything happened at the time that it should. My teams were absolutely critical in terms of delivering Operation London Bridge, and it's something that both parliamentary and diplomatic protection officers and royalty and specialist protection officers have been planning for years.
I figured it had to be for quite a while, many years.
We worked really closely with the local authorities to put in place a traffic plan. We've got some dedicated, really skilled traffic planners, and we needed to make sure that we created that safe space for the operation to take place in and for those ceremonial activities to take place, but also making sure that that was secure for members of the public, that they felt safe when they came up to London, and that involved probably one of the biggest traffic plans that we've ever initiated across London.
Can't even imagine any of this.
It was incredible, actually, the feedback. I was able to go out and walk around the footprint and talk to many different officers from Wales to Cheshire to Essex, and they were all really complimentary about the operation, but more importantly that they were part of it. And I think that was really important, that this was, you know, UK policing at its finest, and the officers that had come down had chosen to come down. They wanted to come down because they wanted to pay their respects. And they were saying just how fantastic the public were in London. Lots of Londoners, but lots of people from outside London, talking to them, you know, engaging with them, and there was a real sense of unity.
The other aspect was the service was incredibly humbled and wanted to make sure that that protect and serve was very much manifest in how smart our officers looked. Not only looking smart, but thinking smart, and also at the core of everything we did was a huge big sense of public service. And having the opportunity to go out and do what we do really well, which is engaging with the public, talking to the public, you know, walking and being alongside the public, and really delivering our duties in a highly professional manner was prevalent through everything we did across the entire operation.
It was absolutely brilliant because what I got to do during the period of time was actually to get out and about a little bit and walk. I did some walking between New Scotland Yard and our headquarters at Lambeth, and I walked over Westminster Bridge and spotted so many officers from so many different forces around the country, and all of them were smiling and welcoming and talking to all of the amazing crowds that were on the bridge, and it was just an absolute pleasure to see them join us in London. We couldn't have done this operation without them.
History.
Seeing the scale, the size, the length of the military procession and what was going to happen on both of the ceremonial days.
It was
and
huge.
To be fair, actually hearing the great big bands with the bagpipes and drums were really, really special because I'd managed to see it. And there was never any chance of me getting outside to see it on the respective days. Definitely one of the highlights of the week was when King Charles came in and met all the people that had been involved in the team behind the team, because clearly everybody can see what is going on out in the public view along the Mall and on the various sectors across the footprint. But for King Charles to come in and actually meet the command team, both myself and Gould and some of the other people who have been behind the scenes and were behind the scenes throughout the entire period, that was lovely, and that was really, really special.
So on the final day, on the funeral day, we were watching the coffin move from London to Windsor, and we were standing in our control room in silence, really, which was really quite eerie. And the moment that the coffin passed from the Met's area of responsibility into Thames Valley was really quite momentous. There was an enormous cheer that went up in our control room because that really felt that we had delivered
successfully delivered the operation. Absolutely. Because
I think it's difficult to point out to a highlight. I think the fact that I was gold for London Bridge, knowing that we swore an oath to the Queen, for me it was a real privilege, but it was also really poignant. And I think the point for me at which, as I say, the hearse went through the gates of Buckingham Palace and the crowds in effect fell silent, and you can see everybody bowing their heads, and it was dark. There was something really poignant about that moment, and it felt like we'd done part of our duty to the Queen to be able to have that moment and be able to bring her safely into London so we could move on to the next parts of the ceremonial aspects.
Initially afterwards, obviously, there is a little bit of adrenaline involved in delivering something so important over such a long period of time.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of time afterwards where it was, okay, what now? But then very quickly, real life takes over again, doesn't it? And all of the things that perhaps had been paused or slowed down a bit to allow us to concentrate on this really important operation have all obviously come back. And so, in a way, as the Met, we're busier than ever.
It's really bizarre actually, because I haven't had time to reflect on some of it yet, having been in the special operations room for 12 days and not gotten home. But I think it was a job that and a huge operation that I've thoroughly enjoyed planning for, and I actually possibly thought might never happen in my service. If somebody said to me some 26 years on that I would be the silver commander for Operation London Bridges, I would have probably said they were mad, to be honest. But I consider myself incredibly lucky to have worked with the gold command that I did, with the partners I have, and particularly with the command within the Met that I had the pleasure of delivering the operation with, because without their experience, their knowledge and their professionalism, I couldn't have done it. And for that I'll be absolutely forever grateful.
All Right, guys. Yeah, 96. I thought it was. So, wow, that was interesting, guys. You know, I like I said, I can't even begin to imagine how, how involved, this must have been, I mean, it was just so huge. I mean, like I said, I think this may be the largest state funeral. I don't know if it's the largest state funeral in the history of the world, but it is definitely one. It's on up there. It's in modern times. I can't think of anything that basically even comes close to, how big Queen Elizabeth's funeral was. But anyways, guys, I can only imagine how, it must have felt to be a part of Operation London Bridge. I'm guessing that is basically what they had set the name to be from the beginning of when Queen Elizabeth died. Her funeral would be known as Operation London Bridge to the police. And I can only imagine what it must have felt like to go through the stress of having to plan this and just hoping everything goes off well and everything. And then, be the commanders within the operation, and then everything, it finally is done, and you can kind of be like, because the stress of that during when it's going on, I can only imagine must have been, pretty high. I mean, because, it's all on your back, or a few people's back, the commanders, But anyways, guys, really enjoyed this. Kind of gave me some insight into what it felt like to be the police, as this was, as the funeral was taking place. And, I really like the police I've seen in the UK so far, guys. Like I said, haven't really learned or seen the police as much as I'd like. It's definitely a subject I want to dive into more. But, what the police here and the police I've seen in other videos within the UK, they're always so, I don't know, they're always so friendly. And you just I don't know, it's like they're open to you just going up to them and asking them a question and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, we have that in the UK, in the US. I mean, we have plenty of friendly police officers, but I must say, it just seems like police officers in the US tend to be a little bit more standoffish than they are in the UK. Don't really know why that would be, but from experience, that seems to be. Well, again, I've only seen a little bit about policing in the UK, so maybe all police or most police aren't like this, but so far they just seem to be very open to people coming up to them and asking them questions and things like that. They just seem to be kind of friendly, and I don't know. It's just kind of different. I kind of want to explore that topic more so I can understand if that's actually the case, or if I've just, that's just a small sample size, so to speak, which is why I'm thinking that might be the case. But anyways, guys, I enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Till next time, guys. Peace.